Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be starting in just a few moments, so I'm going to encourage you to find your seats.
שלא ייגמר לעולם. החול והים, רשרוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם. החול והים, רשרוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם. Oh God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart.
I'm Rabbi Ralph Dallin, and on behalf of the Jewish Federation of San Diego, it is my privilege, together with our host, Rabbi David Kornberg of Congregation Beth Am, to welcome you. In keeping with the mood of this evening, I have two requests. One is, if you haven't done so yet, please silence your cell phone. And the second, please refrain from applause at any time during the ceremony. This evening, we come together as a community to usher in Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. For the last 2 years, COVID-19 precautions limited our communal observance to a virtual one. This year, thankfully, we can come together in person, though many of you we know are watching the ceremony via live stream. Prior to this year and before the pandemic, we would only gather on a Sunday, which was usually not Yom HaShoah itself. This year, we mark the actual beginning of Yom HaShoah with this memorial ceremony. And an education-focused commemoration program will follow this coming Sunday at the Lawrence Family Jewish Community Center. This special and somber day was established by Israel's Knesset in the early 50s. Knesset Speaker Mordechai Nurak reminded his peers at the time of how usually Jews have their own personal Memorial Day, what we call the Yahrzeit, on which to remember deceased loved ones on the anniversary of their death. But for those survivors in Israel in the early days who were struggling with the trauma of the Shoah, adding insult to injury was the fact that even this observance was beyond their grasp, for the simple reason that they had no idea on what specific date their loved ones had perished. And thus Yom HaShoah serves as a way for survivors and their families to personally observe such a Yahrzeit. Additionally, Yom HaShoah provides the Jewish state and the Jewish people with a sacred day on our Jewish calendar, a day on which to honor the memory of all those who perished during the Shoah. Zichronam livracha. May their memories be for us a source of blessing and inspiration.
Good evening. My name is Rabbi David Kornberg. I'm the senior rabbi here at Congregation Beth Am. And we want to welcome you tonight for this Yom HaShoah commemoration. We welcome you, those who are here in person and those who are joining us on live stream. Beth Am, at its foundation, has always had a deep and long connection with the Holocaust, as those who are here saw when they walked through our courtyard into our sanctuary. The arch that has become a symbol of our community originally comes from Rudnice, a town in the Czech Republic that is no longer in existence as a Jewish kihila. There are those who say that inevitably the Shoah will become an entry in a Jewish history book, like the destruction of the temple or the Spanish Inquisition. There are those who say that as we move further away in time from the horrors of the Holocaust, it becomes less emotional, more muted, less personal. While I cannot conclusively speak for what will happen in the future, I can say that for many in this room tonight, it is personal. Sitting with us today, we have survivors, children and grandchildren of survivors. We have people for whom the horrors of the Shoah have shaped their lives and those of their families. For the Jewish community, it is personal. We've centered our tradition and communities around the realization that our history matters. If we forget, we do so at our own peril, both because we lose the lessons and values that have been so hard learned, as well as the very real possibility that history will repeat itself, and has, if we're not vigilant. For me, it's personal. I grew up in the same duality that many children and grandchildren of survivors experience. On the one hand, there's a reluctance by those who experienced it to talk about it, to relive it. And on the other, it indelibly shaped who they were. It was a constant shadowy presence in everything that they did or said. My grandparents lived the horrors that we remember today. Growing up, I heard the story of the wine cellar that my grandfather hid in with 3 friends for days, how they were captured and imprisoned when they finally emerged, and how he got free with the help of the resistance, and how he ultimately joined them. I heard how he met my grandmother in Hungary and was able to save her life and her mother's life, all the while suffering the loss of the rest of her family, as well as his parents and families of his 11 siblings who didn't survive. For me, it's personal, because my grandparents are no longer with us. And if I don't remember, if I don't tell the stories, if we don't tell the stories, they will be lost. And that can't happen. I don't accept the idea that the farther away we get from something, the less personal and less relevant it is. As a matter of fact, not 2 weeks ago, we all focused our attention on belying that very concept as we sat at our Passover tables, endeavoring to make an event that happened millennia ago just as relevant to us today. B'chol dor vador. In every generation, we make it meaningful, we make it personal. That's how we remember as Jews. And that's how we will continue to remember those who were murdered at the hands of the Nazis and those who valiantly fought with all their might against them. We will continue to make it personal, and we will continue to do so together. You see, making it personal doesn't mean that we have to go through it alone. On the contrary, it's during these very moments that our tradition demands that we come together, like we do tonight, as a community. It is in our most challenging times that we value the presence of others to give us strength and to allow us to see a common future together. And so we begin our ceremony tonight with a psalm that reminds us that we are never truly alone, no matter how dark the day. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. Binot deshe yarbitzeni al me menuchot yenahaleni. God makes me lie down in green pastures. God leads me to water in places of repose. Nafshi yeshovev, yancheni v'mraglei tzedek leman shemo. God renews my life. God guides me in right paths as befits God's name. Gam ki elech beget salmavet, lo irara ki ata imadi, shiftecha umishantecha, hema yenachamuni. Though I walk through a valley of deepest darkness, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorerai, dishanta vashemen roshi kosi revaya. You spread a table for me in full view of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my drink is abundant. Ach, tov v'chesed yirdefuni, kol yemei chayai, v'shafti beveit Adonai le'orech yamim. Only goodness and steadfast love shall pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for many long years.
Good evening. My name is Heidi Gantwerk, and I am the President and CEO of Jewish Federation of San Diego County. On behalf of my entire team at Federation, I want to thank you all for being here tonight, either in the sanctuary here with us or online at home, and sharing in the mitzvah of this gathering, this remembrance, this tefillah. At our Passover Seder a few weeks ago, we read an exchange between Ben-Gurion and John Foster Dulles, speaking about the need for a Jewish state, which Dulles did not understand or appreciate at the time. Ben-Gurion was trying to get across the notion of peoplehood. He asked Dulles, he said, how many American children know who captained the Mayflower or the other ships? How long it took for the Mayflower to get to America? What happened when they got there? The answer, of course, was not very many American children could answer those questions. But Ben-Gurion continued, ask almost any Jewish child anywhere in the world, who led us out of Egypt? How long did it take? What happened when we got there? They can tell you the answers. Because we collectively remember, and we retell that story every year, as Rabbi Kornberg was saying. Remembering the stories of the Shoah, the personal stories of survivors and those who did not survive, is essential. We must listen and listen again, and we must tell others. I have felt the enormous privilege since stepping into this role of sitting with some of the nearly 500 survivors here in San Diego, many of whom are in this room and I've had the privilege of talking with. And I've heard their stories, and not just stories from the terrible years during the Holocaust, but their stories afterwards of struggle, of hope, of children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and businesses they've started, and books they've written, and all of the ways they have shared their own painful trauma as often and with as many people as possible. I think often of the courage and the conviction it takes to relive the most traumatic, horrific experience of your life, and to do so publicly and willingly, again and again, so that others can learn and begin to understand and carry forward. We owe it to these amazing individuals, and to those who are not here today, to tell their stories, to carry this story forward. The responsibility for keeping this history and the lessons that we must take from it rest with all of us. Being here together to remember is how we keep the story alive. And sadly, these stories do not feel any less urgent today than they did when I was a child. If anything, the world feels more divided and more unsafe for Jews. This week, the Anti-Defamation League released their audit of anti-Semitic events. And in the words of our regional director, Tammy Gillis, we have never seen a year like 2021, which saw a 34% increase in anti-Semitic incidents in the United States, with no state left untouched, and a 61% rise in incidents targeting Jewish institutions. The same is true around the world. So it is urgent and it is essential that we gather here tonight and again on Sunday to mourn those we have lost, to remember, to learn, and to commemorate the Shoah. We must honor the memory of all of those who perished by doing everything we can to ensure the rest of the world does not forget or revise history or treat the Holocaust as historical artifact. And we must also tell the story of our resilience, of our strength as a people, of the joy and the pride that we take in living proudly and openly Jewish in ways that are meaningful to all of us and all of our families. So thank you all, once again, for gathering with us tonight in community and sharing this tremendously important mitzvah.
Shmerka Kaczerginski and Alexander Volkovitsky witnessed firsthand the horrors of the Vilna Ghetto and the Ponari massacre, where 70,000 Jews were murdered between 1941 and 1944 and buried in mass graves. Kaczerginski, an educator and a poet, wrote the words, and 11-year-old Volkovitsky wrote the melody to Stiller, Stiller. The song describes the events at Ponari as a mother singing a lullaby to her son. She tells him of the tragedy of Vilna, but shares her hope that from the darkness, light will emerge.
Stiller, stiller, lo mir schweigen, vor ihm wachsen Baum. Zoben sei verpflanzt die Zonen, grünen sei zum Lohn. Zwieren Wegen zu Ponar zu, zwir kein Weg zurück. Ist der Tater wo verschwunden und mich ihm das Glück. Stiller kein mein Weg nicht äußer, zwei nicht kein Gewinn. Und der Unglück wellen Sonnen, sie nicht verstehen. So bringen euch die Armen, Zobens für es euch zusammen, nur zu der Pai kein bissel schön, kein bissel schön. Quiet, quiet, let's be silent. Graves are growing here. They were planted by the tyrant, a forest full of fear. All the roads lead to Bonar now, there is no way back. And our father too has vanished, and with him our love. Still, my child, don't cry, my jewel, tears won't help us now. Our pain, callous people never understand. Seas and oceans have their order, prisons also have their border. And to our pain there is no plight. There is no plight. Stille, stille, long schweigen, vor ihm wachsen Baum. Zoben sei verpflanzt die Zonen, grünen sei zum Lohn. Zwieren Wegen zu Bonar zu, zwir kein Weg zurück. Ist der Tater wo verschwunden und nicht ihm das Glück. Stiller kein mein Weg nicht äußer, wenn nicht quell gewinn. Der Unglück wellen son ihm sie wie nicht verstehen. Zoben bringen euch die Armen, Zoben zveres euch zusammen. Not und der Pai kein bissel schön, kein bissel schön.
On a yard site, we light a candle to symbolize the eternal soul of one who has died. It is a reflection on the horrific enormity of the Shoah that, in theory, we should be lighting 6 million candles this evening. But since that is something we cannot do, it has become customary in public ceremonies such as this that we light 6 candles, each symbolic of 1 million of our brethren who perished in the Shoah. And in a few minutes, we shall do so here. However, in addition, I want to encourage all of us to light a yahrzeit candle in our own homes after this ceremony concludes. For those of you here in the sanctuary, on your way out, you can pick up a special yellow Yom HaShoah yahrzeit candle and a meditation which you can read at the time of the lighting. For those of you who are watching live stream, if you have a regular yahrzeit candle at home, then it is perfectly fitting and appropriate that you use that. The 6 candles in this menorah will be lit by Ben Midler, one of our local survivors, and a member of our Yom HaShoah Remembrance Committee. I want to call on all the survivors who are here in the congregation this evening to come forward at this time and be present around the menorah as Ben lights these candles. So if you're comfortable doing so, I invite all the survivors to come forward. And I'm going to ask all of us to rise and to remain standing after the lighting until the conclusion of the El Malei Rachamim memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina B'ma'alot Kedoshim U'Tohorim Kezohar Rakia Mazhirim Lenishmotehem Shel 600 Revavot Acheinu B'nei Yisrael Shenitbachu v'Shoah Anashim Nashim v'Tav Shenehergu v'nichneku v'nisrafu v'nikbaru chayim v'shahachu la'olamam al kiddush Hashem B'gan Eden Tehei menuchatam Ana bal harachamim הסתירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום על משכבם. ונאמר Please be seated. Rabbi Devorah Marcus of Temple Emmanuel and president of the San Diego Rabbinical Association will now share with us a poem by Primo Levi called Shema.
You who live secure in your warm houses, who return at evening to find hot food and friendly faces, consider whether this is a man who labors in the mud, who knows no peace, who fights for a crust of bread, who dies at a yes or a no. Consider whether this is a woman without hair or name, with no more strength to remember, eyes empty and womb cold as a frog in winter. Consider that this has been. I command these words to you, engrave them on your hearts when you are in your house, when you walk on your way, when you go to bed, and when you rise. Repeat them to your children.
As many of us know, the Kaddish prayer doesn't refer to death. It reminds us of the need to take those memories that inspire us and build a future, build a world that is reflective of those values of the people that were so important to us. I'm going to invite everyone here, if you would, to please rise. And for those who feel comfortable joining with me in the Mourner's Kaddish, some because you have people in your family that you would like to say Kaddish for, but I'll also remind you that these candles represent millions who have nobody to speak for them right now. If you choose to, raise your voice in the words of the Kaddish and speak for them as well. You can find the Hebrew and transliteration on the inside of your pamphlets. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach cherutei ve'amlich malchutei, b'chayei chon u'v'yomei chon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam ulmei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar, v'yit'aleh, v'yithalal, shmei d'kudesha, b'richu, leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechamata, da'amiran ve'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. 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 Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v You're welcome to be seated. The words of Ani Ma'amin were uttered by people during their darkest moments. They are words of hope. They are a call imploring us not to give up on the future despite the challenges of our present. They remind us that we believe that the world can be better through God's help and through our actions. Today, we need these words as much as ever before. We once again see the horrors of war and hate spreading in our world and through the Ukraine. May these words remind us that to hope for a better future means to act for a better future.
באמונה שלמה, באמונה שלמה, בביאת המשיח, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין. בביאת המשיח, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין. אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין. אני מאמין באמונה שלמה, באמונה שלמה, ואף על פי שיתממח, עם כל זה אני מאמין, ואף על פי שיתממח, עם כל זה אני מאמין. אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין.
In a few moments, Cantor William Type of Temple Solel will help us conclude the ceremony by singing Hatikva, which means the hope. Why conclude a Holocaust remembrance ceremony in California with the national anthem of Israel? Although Hatikva was composed in the late 19th century, its message dates back to the prophet Yechezkel, Ezekiel. Ezekiel was told to prophesy over a valley of dried bones, which represented the depressed Jewish people in exile. People who cried out, Avda tikvatenu, our hope is lost. In response to the lament, Avda tikvatenu, our hope is lost, the anthem Hatikva reflects and asserts, Od lo Avda tikvatenu, indeed, our hope is not lost. That was and continues to be a powerful message of affirmation after the Shoah, when survivors and their descendants made their homes in the future state of Israel as well as in the United States and elsewhere. As we commemorate the deaths of the 6 million, as we are so aware of the senseless destruction of lives in Ukraine and aware of so much suffering, let us focus on tikva, on hope for a brighter tomorrow. Please rise and join Cantor Type in singing Hatikva.
Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. It is sad that these are the moments that often bring us together, but I am so glad to be in a community that we can come together and remember the way that we have done tonight. Thank you and good evening.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Beautiful words.
I think you do most of the
horrible and tragic things in the community and sometimes
Yeah.
You turned them together.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Thank you. It's not my what? No, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. I love stuff like this. I love singing parts and songs and Yiddish stuff, Yiddish theater. I love it.
You know, I'm